The heavy downpour which flooded the Toledo district over the weekend continued for much of our journey south this morning. The situation was critical on Saturday when NEMA was activated and families in various low-lying communities had to be evacuated and placed in shelters.
This time around, it's mostly in the northern part of the district, Big Fall upwards. So we have Big Falls, San Miguel, which has just a few people. Between both of them, it's about 7 or 8 families. Only one in shelter. The most hard hit areas would be going on up Golden Stream, um, move on up to Bladen, Trio, and now Bella Vista. Um, we had shelters open initially in Golden Stream. So far, since yesterday evening, nobody was in shelter. They went back and trying to clean out their homes and stuff. So as water recedes, they're trying to get back home. We still currently have shelters open in Bladen, in Trio, and in Bella Vista as of last night.
Flooding in the Toledo district is nothing new, and the response by NEMO should certainly be indicative of a well-oiled machine at this point, from activation to the all clear.
The initial thing is the safety of the people. So out of the gate would be transport and evacuation supported by BDF, getting people to safety, getting them into shelter. Once they're in shelter, the Relief Supplies Management Committee reaches out there as quickly as possible with some pre-packaged stuff and get them, that's so they at least have food. No? Of course, we always emphasize, you know you're going to move into shelter, you know the flooding is coming, please begin to prepare yourself, bring along some food and this type of thing, because part of this whole system, of course, is the community aspect of it and the community preparedness, which would strengthen our whole emergency system. But aside from that, Relief Supplies is prepared, and they're the committee that is charged with looking after the humanitarian needs for these people, especially with food and so forth. So they get into shelter with a prepackaged stuff, and then normally we'd follow up after that if the shelter stay is prolonged, and we would set up stove gas tanks in these centers so people can cook in a communal kind of fashion and have hot meals. We've done this before, like in Golden Stream, Big Falls, and so it's not anything strange to us.
Like we said, not rocket science, but still there are complaints of the response being inadequate. In the community of Bladen, over 100 persons are still in shelter. Today, they were taking full advantage of dry clothes and food provided by Emilio Zabani and religious leaders from Belmopan and the south.
The people responsible for NEMO tell me that they're on the ground doing the best they can. But what I can tell you is that from what we saw in the shelters, which were unofficial shelters, it was churches that were open, there's nothing there, I believe an adequate shelter should have a stove that people could cook. Because if they give you beans and rice and flour, what are you going to do with it if your stove or your fire heart is underwater? Another thing that I would like to see addressed is that I understand from NEMO that you're supposed to come to the shelter with your 2 days supplies of food. But that's for people that decide to go there early. What about people that are rescued? In Bladen right here, when I brought the canoe in at 10 o'clock one night to come and rescue people that were trapped, there were 2 men that were up in a tree. Now if these people come to the shelter, how can they bring anything with them? And so I think we need to rethink how we shelter people and the needs of the shelter. Because definitely a shelter needs the cots, you need to sleep comfortably. I have pictures of babies just spread out on the floor in a church. I don't think that's adequate response.
Sometimes logistically we have to overcome some hurdles, for instance with the flooding and the roads that we don't anticipate. Sometimes we get a late start, vehicles, transportation, and this type of thing. But with every incident we face, we see areas where we can improve a little bit better, and of course we change, and then you find a little bit more areas where we can change. And so we discuss them. It's not like a intentional bottleneck or stuff like that, where people are not getting through. It's a fluid thing. It's a system that we have very good mechanisms in place, I believe. The NEMO system, it works. The committees that are set up, even at the community level. And wherever we see we need to improve, we improve.
In Golden Stream, one of the areas most affected, water rose as high as the mark left on these wooden structures. It has now receded, but the Ministry of Health is making its rounds to prevent any outbreaks.
The main thing we want to advise people is stay inside as much as possible. Don't go in the rain. Don't play in the rain. Don't play in the waters because you can get contamination as well. People at times get the water in the mouth when they're playing in the water. We don't advise anyone to play in the water at this time, right? Because the pigs are also around, the dogs are around, they're stooling on the place, and you can have children catching worms and parasites and viruses and bacteria. So we advise you stay inside, don't play in the water, don't play in the rain. All right, keep dry as much as possible and keep safe.
It is expected that persons could remain in shelters for the rest of this week until their homes dry out. Mike